This car is the most honest car you ever see.
It's been a dream ever since I've had it.
The first time I heard that engine screaming, I thought, I gotta have one of those.
For me, the cars have personality.
What's great about a BMW Classic is the community that surrounds it.
When you listen to that, that's why we're here.
Welcome to Classic Heart, the BMW Group Classic Podcast. My name is JP, and my guest today knows BMW inside out. Dr. Andreas Braun is working for the BMW Group Museum. Is it the BMW Group Museum, Andreas, or is it just the BMW Museum?
We just call it very short the BMW Museum, as this it is well known all over the world.
But you see also brands and histories from Rolls-Royce and Mini at the museum, is that correct?
You are right. We also focus sometimes on the history of all the other brands of the company, such as Rolls-Royce motor cars and Mini, BMW Motorrad, BMW I and BMW M.
So all of the great brands connected to the BMW Group. Andreas, please tell us more. What exactly is your job? Are you the museum director, or how can you describe your job best?
There is an item that describes a little bit what I'm doing. It's the curator. Mm-hmm. Curator comes from the Latin word cura, and cura means to take care for something. Sometimes I think there are much more curators running all over our globe than only in the museum, because it's too general to say, I take care for something. Many people take care for somebody else, for example. What I do is I'm a translator, I'm a mediator, I think I'm also an entertainer, and I'm a designer, and sometimes, I'm also a teacher. Our museum is a satellite of our company, of the BMW Group, and we had the chance to go directly into the public. We are nearer to our customers, to all the visitors, than perhaps other parts of our company. Our visitors, it's a very international audience. They come from very different countries, and I'm sure they also have very different expectations. And sometimes I use the opportunity as a mystery guest. I walk through the museum and I watch all my visitors make my studies, and sometimes I am in a very silent dialogue with them, that they read my text, that they see how I have brought things on stage, and this makes me very happy.
Andreas, do you have a car background, or what is your personal background?
My background is far away from cars, from the first point of view. I have studied art history, so I'm art historian, mm-hmm. and I was very engaged for many years in adult education. Mm-hmm. And beside that, I also have written a lot of books, for example, about regions in Italy and also in the south of Spain, and especially Tuscany. And perhaps it's this, to tell stories, to find a line that readers still keep in touch. Mm-hmm. So storytelling is my job from the beginning.
I mean, that must be super exciting, because I'm sure that even though cars are not artwork per se, I think you can tell interesting stories about so many topics you can touch. But coming back to the way you got to the museum, how did you get the job? So was there were you sitting and looking into job adverts and there was a job at the BMW Museum, or how could I imagine that?
Oh, no, it was, first of all, I made my doctoral thesis, and the title was Art History and Cultural History of Speed. Mm-hmm. In the 19th century. And I offered that topic to BMW, and it was that small, that wonderful situation that BMW was open for an experiment like that, and they gave me the scholarship. So the speed, to describe the speed in the medium of painting that normally doesn't know any speed. And this was very interesting. And so I had a wonderful contact first to the communication department, later then also to the section of heritage. And then I heard about a new concept for a new BMW museum. And you can say that I was the right man for the right situation at the right time. And so I could join the project before the opening in the concept area and also since the opening in May 2008.
Wow. I mean, that's very interesting. And so like your thesis brought you the job, is that correct to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will never forget that BMW gave me that support in that time so that I could finance my studies at the end. And that was wonderful.
At the right time, at the right place, I would say. Sounds very lovely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, what a nice story. I think that's very cool. So it's fair to say you could not have pictured you becoming the curator of a car museum.
No, but an art historian also guides people through churches. It's the world of picture is not only reduced to canvas and paintings on a wall. It's finding the right words to open eyes and also for yourself to see things. And even a car is an artwork. It's like a design object. And there are so many questions you can ask, so many different aspects. Even it's the time, if you do not want to talk about the car itself, it's also the time, the so-called zeitgeist. There you can do a lot as an art historian.
That sounds absolutely right to me, even though I'm not so much into art. But in our discussions beforehand, I told you about my knowledge about art. It's like or dislike, unfortunately. I'm a very dull person in that sense, I have to say. So I'm very happy for everyone like you and your colleagues doing a great job to cater this kind of information about whatever it is in a way that I can consume it. I get excited about consuming it. But if I may, I would like to jump back to the process of curating. In the daily work, what does it actually mean to curate a car museum? What are the challenges?
First of all, it's not a normal museum to say. It's the museum of a company. This is very important. Outside, you see already our main mission. That means BMW Museum. What you can read outside, you can also find in it. The most important thing that we have in our museum are perhaps not the cars, but it's credibility. I see that as a treasure looking back to what I did in a museum. Credibility is very important. Tell the facts. If something is not 100%, don't say 100%. This is more honest and will be accepted by the visitors. What is also important, I am not only focused on old cars. Museums don't say that they are only living for the past. I think they also obtain a position for questions of the present. Museums are very good locations, platforms of discussing things. And so our museum as well is not only talking about the year 1923. No, we also step into the present in the year 2023 as well.
And is that a challenge to always find, let's say, the link between the past and the present? Or what else is like a mega challenge for you?
The challenge perhaps is that I have a very large range of visitors. My audience is very spread, very bright, and it's very difficult to tell something to a child or to an adult. Sometimes we also have experts and they want to know it very clear and very in detail. And for others, it's too much. And then you have to find a good way to serve everybody. And sometimes this is very difficult. And in behind, you also have the company itself. The company has also expectations. It's my audience that I want to fascinate. And fascinating sounds very easy, but it's very difficult.
I can imagine how difficult it must be because there's so many different kind of visitors. Young people, old people, those who are only interested in design, some who has no clue about cars and just start the interest in cars, and so on and so on and so on. And I think, from a personal experience, I really like the museum because the museum is a fascinating place. And that's also thanks to you, the curator. Let's face it. So everyone, stop by Munich, go to the museum, and let us know what you think about it. But Andreas, tell us more about the salad bowl, as people in Munich call the main building of the museum. What's so special about it?
First of all, it's really something which is very obvious, the geographic location. Not many museums belong directly to the center of their company. It's very next to it. We had an Austrian architect, Karl Schwanzer, who had this wonderful idea to connect a headquarter with something, you called it a bowl. I have never found a better word for that. And if you position a museum next to the headquarter, it's also an expression of soul and memory next to the board. And I love that. And then we enlarged the museum in 2008. And since that, we have two different buildings, and they give us also many chances to create things. We have the bowl with a circular structure, and we have a flat wing, which is, it's created just the opposite. So two different buildings. One is for the permanent exhibition and the other for the temporary. And the concept is also wonderful. It dates back to 1972, that the architect said, I would like to create a museum. The center should be the road. The road is the place for every car and every motorbike. And I bring that road into an entire space.
Yeah.
And it's not a normal space. It's not a normal architecture. It's a little bit like a parking house. And when you move on that road, you can use it for the visitors, for the transport of our cars, for everything. I love that concept because first there was the concept and then the museum was made. It was not the other way around.
Yeah.
What I also love in my museum is that you always can discover something new. If you enter the museum, you don't see from the first moment, there is the end, and this is my way to go through it. And the next corner goes to the right or to the left, and something is waiting for you.
Yeah.
The visitor's path is not predictable. So I think this is a secret of the success of our museum. We also have something which I have learned from film producers, that we position our exhibits sometimes in spaces where they are very densely, many exhibits in one room. And then the next one is almost empty and shows only one single car. For example, the 507 of Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
And this transition, this variation makes it very interesting to spend a lot of time in the museum. And I am very glad to say that our visitors normally spend more than 1.5 hours in our museum. This is a lot.
I would assume it's much more, but I mean, you know the figures better. Because, I mean, the museum has so many things to look at and to experience.
The time that you spend during your leisure time is a gift for a company and for a museum.
Yeah.
We should take care for that gift and don't bore them. And that's why we have to present and to do a lot. Perhaps in the future, I have to take care for more seats, that people can sit down and can have a pause. If you allow me, I would like to add some exciting facts and figures of our museum.
Shoot, please, by all means.
We have more than 120 cars and motorbikes. This is really a lot for 5,000 square meters. And we count more than 600,000 visitors a year.
Wow.
And I also know that our museum is one of the 10 most attractive museums in Germany.
I mean, that's a super achievement.
Yeah, and you may not forget, in Germany we count more than 6,000 museums.
Yeah, that's that's an impressive number. But this puts also a bit pressure on the whole team, I would assume.
Yeah.
Andreas, I could imagine that curating a museum like the BMW Museum is a hell of a job. I mean, there's lots of things to do. Do you all do this on your own, or who supports you in the daily job, in the curating phase?
You are absolutely right with that question. A curator sometimes feels that he is the heart and the center of everything, but he cannot deal it. He cannot prepare an exhibition, and he cannot run a museum at all. I am in a wonderful situation. I have two wonderful colleagues, and they do all the different exhibitions in a team with me together. We help each other, we support us, and we criticize our work, which is very important to give the best. Running a museum, we also need facility management, we need the guest management. They are all experts in their fields. We have the logistics, very important. We have an archive where people just focus on documents and clarify things. We couldn't do a good exhibition without them. We have agencies in different manners. They do a wonderful job. And at least I would like to name all the nameless, unprominent employees in our company. When we prepare a new exhibition, I step into that company in the different departments, and they tell wonderful stories, and I'm always astonished and say, please tell me more. And sometimes they say, well, this has happened 3-4 years ago. I think this doesn't interest anybody. And I say, no, I'm the museum. I want to know it all. Tell me the story. And so, coming back to your question, I need the whole family, I need the whole company to bring a good exhibition to the public.
I mean, you and your colleagues bring to life the museum's very special identity. How do you do that? Are there rules, or is there a general basic concept?
We keep to one story. We have spoken already about the brands of the BMW Group. What we just stay only to that. We are telling a story of a company from the beginning till today. It's a story like a man, with success and also bad times, and mistakes were done, and perhaps presenting BMW as a person. If you enter our museum, you just focus only on this person. Perhaps you can smell it with all the material we use, because also our architecture, the material we use in our spaces really describes BMW, and we are very consequent to use that. All the material we use, we first ask, is that really BMW? Does it really underline, does it really express what BMW stands for?
That makes total sense, because that's also the expectations of a visitor, right?
And here I come back to credibility. It makes us, I know that, I have made my experience, it makes us much more sympathetic when we also talk about disadvantages, because this is normal. If you only tell stories and tell others that you are the best, after a while this is boring. But if you're honest, if you say, here we had difficulties, we have learned from these mistakes, we have done it better. Now we stay here and there's a challenge for the future, but we trust in ourselves and we are sure we will achieve that. People will listen to that. They are open because it's a good and honest story.
Yeah. I mean, that's maybe the difference between a PR department of a car manufacturer and a museum, I would say.
We just belong to the communication department and not to the marketing. I would not say anything against marketing. This is also very helpful and necessary. But if you contribute to communication, your targets are different. And a reliable story, telling facts, is much more important and should be also the DNA of a museum.
Andreas, and you have to tell another big story because we are celebrating 100 years of BMW Motorrad. And my question is, have you planned something special for this occasion?
When we are talking about 100 years, could we repeat that? 100 years from 1923 up to 2023. It's a century. It's also an occasion really to look back. So yes, I'm so excited to have the job to create something for 100 years of a brand. It's really an absolutely long period within the world of mobility. 100 years, who else can tell that?
Not many, obviously, that's for sure. Absolutely. And this might come along as a very dumb question, even though I believe there are no dumb questions, but you know what I mean. But just to understand your job and your daily work a bit better, do you see a difference in curating a motorcycle exhibition rather than a car exhibition?
If you just look onto the size, when I was allowed to prepare the Rolls-Royce exhibition in 2013, we were able to put 13 Rolls-Royce motor cars into the bowl. You must imagine cars with a length of more than 6 meters. Then after a while, it was our task also to present Mini, smaller car, the possibility for more cars. 34 could be placed in the bowl. And now we speak about the motorbikes. 56 is really now the amount of bikes that we present. But there is also another difference. What we are doing here with the motorbike, there is no difference between exterior and interior as we have it in terms of cars. Mm-hmm. There is no hidden world with the engine space, with the interior space and the luggage compartment. The bike is what it is, and you can see everything, and especially all the technical details are presented, and the engineers of BMW motorbikes want to show all their talents, all how it works, and it's naked, if you want to say so.
So we see actually more of a motorcycle in an exhibition than from a car, because interior is always hidden by a closed door. Not always, but sometimes. So that's very interesting. But looking back into the rich history of BMW again, I mean, for sure, one of the eldest company building motorcycles. And you presenting this fantastic exhibition, which I can't wait to see. But what are your personal highlights?
There is a wonderful small motorbike produced in 1947. It's the BMW R10 prototype. It was first produced in the project phase as a wooden model. There was no other material like that. We may not forget it was really a dark time for Germany after the lost World War II. And a very small bike and a prototype. And then in 1948, the Allies allowed us to produce motorbikes with 250 cubic centimeter. So the R24 was the first post-war motorcycle. But I would like to remember the time before. We should never forget the R10, which was really the beginning. And despite of that, if we talk about couples that we want to present every time, there is a very interesting concept, BMW CEO2, an electric vehicle of 2021. It's a really light one with only 120 kilogram and 15 horsepowers and 19 kilometers per hour top speed and 19 kilometers for the range. So this is a really interesting vehicle for urban mobility. The next baby is the wonderful racer of 1939, the BMW Type 255 compressor factory races with the legendary start number 49, where Josh Meyer won the tourist trophy on the Isle of Man. It was a German driver with a non-British motorbike, and this was extraordinary. So we present this, and also Michael Dunlop, who did the same in 2014 with the S1000RR.
Yeah.
And we also present the Victoria Car R1 and the R7, a wonderful prototype produced in 1934. More art deco. It's an artwork more than a motorbike. And it was also restored a few years ago. And then, last but not least, we present a parade of BMW R18. This is really the big boxer. It's pure riding pleasure. It's a very big motorcycle, a combination between historical bike construction and a modern purist custom bagger style. And we are able to present a parade of the big ones.
And listening to all these fantastic stories and different motorcycles, which one is then the eldest?
Yeah, normally all the fans know that the eldest one is the R32, which we also present in our museum in the permanent exhibition. But in this case, in the temporary exhibition, we just do something else. When we just look into the beginning, 1921-20, there was the first motorbike engine, M2B15. And then in 1923, Max Fritz, he was a genius, constructor, engineer, designer. He created the R32, but 1 year later, he also created, together with Schleicher, the R37 with an absolute more stronger engine, 16 horsepowers, that won a lot of victories. So this is typical for the DNA of BMW, producing something and searching the competition, looking for races where BMW can demonstrate the power and the liability of its products. And really it won several times, and the wisdom to say to win on Sunday, to sell on Monday. And in 1925, the R37 was also sold to private customers. The top speed was 115 kilometers per hour, and the costs were 2,900 marks. Ooh. And with that, it was the most expensive bike in the German market.
But if you look at the rich history of BMW Motorrad, there must be a challenge curating this kind of exhibition.
I wouldn't say it's a challenge. A challenge sounds a little bit like responsibility. It's very heavy. It's a hard job. No, it was really fascinating. Knowing something about 100 years, talking with the experts in the archive and also with the experts in BMW motorrad today, and talking with them about possibilities. What can we show beside that the bikes are the stars? And beside the motorbike itself, we focused on tanks. Perhaps you couldn't imagine. You can tell a wonderful story of 100 years only describing and comparing tanks. The form, for example, or the frame of a motorbike, which was very simple in the beginning, and today it's really a high-tech piece that BMW Motorrad produces. Also the seats or the lighting, the helmets, they tell wonderful stories from the beginning where safety was nothing, and today it's really a very important detail.
It sounds absolutely amazing. And for those listening in, I mean, come on, stop by and have a look at 100 years of BMW Motorrad at the BMW Museum in Munich. So, Andreas, how long are you doing this job?
As I told you, I began as a student making my doctor's degrees. Then this was in 1997. And very intensively working for BMW in the museums or heritage department. This is since 2002.
It's you're looking back on a little legacy. And what would you say personally for you is your most liked achievement while curating the BMW Museum?
What time may I spend for that question?
Find the right level. Find the right level between modesty and honesty.
Very good response. Very good. I realized 6 larger and I think also beautiful, well-reputed brand exhibitions, just beginning with Rolls-Royce motor cars, followed by Mini, and then the BMW Group, let's say BMW, followed by BMW I, BMW M, and now 100 years of BMW motorbikes. I also wrote many books accompanying the exhibition, catalogs that you also find in the international book trade. This was very important for me to bring also the museum's idea into that world. And what perhaps was my job, what I like to do very much was a lot of reference to history, not only presenting the cars, but also bringing out documents from the archive, small items that tell also about a car, inventions that were made, other treasuries of the archive that you normally won't see. And what I also loved were exclusively guided tours, not only creating exhibitions, but also guiding people through that museum. And also I love to create events in the museum.
Is there one thing that you really dream of, which maybe not happened yet, or which you would really love to see happening?
No, not yet, but I'm too much into my job. I did not found yet the distance like a painter that has a distance to his canvas.
Yeah.
But for the future, I would like to use more formats, digital formats, to bring them into an exhibition space as well. These are some things. I'm now using films and photos, but there are so many more possibilities. I only have to decide, is that really something that supports, or is it something that attracts too much attention beside a car? Because the car still is the star.
Let's see what the new media will bring. You know, with AI developments like ChatGPT and all these kind of artificial intelligence services and apps, do you think that sometime an AI will curate a museum exhibition?
Why not? I'm not in fear about that. It brings us much more possibilities. The museum, in a traditional sense, I'm convinced, will stay as an attractive museum. There is still the BMW Museum in Munich, in the north of the city, and there you can see them all.
Yeah.
They are there. You can, no, you may not, but you can touch them if the curator doesn't look at. And but many visitors sometimes are disappointed. 5,000 square meters, we cannot show all our history. Oh, you do not present the Isetta now? I have come from Tokyo, and what's on now? So there are so many possibilities with artificial and digital reality to present it. And there we can demonstrate, we can present all of the cars, all of the bikes.
Yeah.
So this is not a competition. It's something that contributes, it supports us. And also it will bring more levels, more information. It can explain much better than I perhaps can do that. More experience also. I am not in fear that would kick a normal museum out. I think that will be a win-win situation at the end. And also younger people just now already ask, curator, don't tell me a story. I would like to act as the visitor. What do you do for me? And a PlayStation, a quiz, something to touch. And these are new possibilities. Also, I think that the self-definition of a museum will change within the next years.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we see this also rapidly. If you look at, for example, Qatar, who are building a complete new car museum, and it's more for them that, so what I learned from talking to the press department of theirs, because we're planning to do a story about this in Classic Driver, is that they would see it as an educational point where you also see how someone works on a car, what the car meant for the development of Qatar itself, but then also being with like very playful, so little stations where young adults and very young kids can play together on the different levels. So it sounded very interesting. I don't know, you would be the better judge for this, but it sounded to me very interesting, and I'm excited to see this, and also excited to see how the BMW Museum will cope with all this new adventures, let's call it that way, because I think we should embrace technology and not always be fearful towards technology. I think
it opens many possibilities, and only that the name, the item of museum, I would like to keep that because it's a wonderful tradition coming from the past, from the antique times, and we should still call it a museum and not an experience world, something like that.
Wonderful said. So, Andreas, for many of those who are listening to our little conversation here, I think your job description sounds like the dream job. I mean, if you're interested in cars and you have the chance to work for a car museum, and especially as someone who's creating the experience of the car museum for visitors and fans of the brands, but what do you like most about it?
Perhaps it's staging, it's bringing things on scene for the public. So for other people, I like to get into a dialogue with other people. Mm-hmm. I like to close my eyes and to anticipate a visit like a movie, and to see afterwards the result many months later, if it's really like that or if something had to be changed. I also love the challenge to take difficult things and difficult missions to be translated. Mm-hmm. It must be possible to explain complicated situations and systems, to bring it to a lower level so that everybody can understand it. That must be possible.
May I just ask, Andreas, excuse me, do you have an example for such a complexity where you say that's a good example how we brought complexity down to a nice level to consume or to understand? Is there something in your mind?
Yeah, it's, for example, BMW I, which is really a 360 degrees project, and to explain a little bit of what's going on, what people thought about that in the development department. Whatever you do, if you speak about sustainability, if you touch one thing, you have also to keep in mind the consequences for many other things. Mm-hmm. Many things are complicated, not yet done, not yet achieved, but we are on a good way. And I would like to tell you about the complexity and to understand that you cannot realize it from one day to the other. Mm-hmm. I also like to surprise, to fascinate my people with knowledge or new facts that they say, this is something that I have never heard before. Mm-hmm. I see myself also as a creator of moments of happiness. Yeah. And I think this is something which is perhaps the most attractive point of my dream job.
The way I imagine it is that every curator has his own personality, his own perspective. Does this play a role also in the way you curate an exhibition? Or is it even possible to create an exhibition from a neutral point of view, no emotions attached, just sheer facts?
I think you can't do a good exhibition without emotions. Many years ago, we had the invention of the white cube. This was a neutral basement, and people thought, well, this is the best way to present things without any scene. But this was the wrong way, because you never can not bring things on stage. You always create, even if you take only white walls. Also with that, you have a scene, you just express something. So I think an emotional way to present something is the only way to bring things to people. The museum is not a place to reduce the exhibits onto level 0. Look yourself, find yourself an opinion about that. This is not a museum. It's always personal, colored way of interpretation. So please be more emotional in every museum. People will love it.
Absolutely. It makes total sense what you said, that actually also White Cube is a stage indeed. Absolutely. It's a statement. It's something where something's going to happen. So I never thought about that in that sense. So that's very interesting. And looking back at all the years at the museum, what are some super happy memories you have about things happening in the museum? It could be everything and anything. So where you think back and it put a little smile on your face.
Wonderful question. First of all, I have invented a special format for an event that took place once a year, and we did that for many years in our BMW Museum. It was the night of the white gloves. This idea came up when I watched blind people, how they could see cars. They needed a lot of silence without other people, and then they took their hands, their fingers, and they touched the surface of a car. And I was so fascinated that I said, well, we should do that for seeing people as well. And I just remember that many colleagues in other museums said, oh, Andreas, don't do that. They will hurt your cars. You will have to repair everything. And it was just the opposite. All our visitors, and we got 3,000 a night, they got gloves, white gloves, and they cleaned our cars in a way which they were never before in a normal way. So this is something I'm very proud of. And another experience was I was preparing the Rolls-Royce motor cars exhibition. And as you know, the history is outstanding. Just if you look on the year after 1904, when the brand was founded, and all the wonderful luxury cars of the 20s and the 30s, such as the Phantom 2 and Phantom 3, one of them we wanted to bring into the bowl with a structure that was created in 1972 for BMW cars. They are fascinating, but they are not too big. And then we just took the measures of the Rolls-Royce of that time, of an old one, and at last 2 centimeters of the size, decided whether we could bring Rolls-Royce into the bowl or not. There was a curve, a very difficult and dangerous situation on the path going upstairs in the bowl, and really it went okay, but nobody has heard about that. 6 meters and 32 is the maximum that we can achieve in the museum, and the car had 6 meters and 32.
Another fun fact. So everyone tuning in your next conversation, you can bring this up in the pub talk saying, you know what, are you aware that at the BMW Museum, if you want to put it into the bowl, the car can't be longer than 6 meters 32. I mean, what a great fact. I love that one. And the white glove thing sounds absolutely exciting, like the Concours of Elegance on the frozen lake in St. Moritz. And we decided always to not have barriers or like any things of that people can't get close to the cars. By the way, the same principle in Villa d'Este and Villa Erba. And you see the people being so respectful towards the cars. That's unbelievable. And I think they are more respectful than if there would have been like a little line around the car, which you shall not cross. I think that's a fascinating thing to see how easygoing and respectful the guests at both of the events are. So it's really like, it comes same to the way you described. So if you give the audience the opportunity and the right tools, they will respect it.
And they also check themselves. They are all small curators.
Yes.
They look onto others. Hey, what do you do? Why don't you use the white gloves? And I have to not to do anything.
Yeah. Is there a next White Gloves event coming up? Do you know that's out of memory?
Yeah, but I may not announce that there is.
Okay.
But I hope that will come back. Yeah.
Good. I don't want to talk about the budget of the BMW Museum, but allow me a question. If money was no object, there's no budget limit, what would you do in the BMW Museum?
My answer is money doesn't count. It's not a matter of money. It's a matter of creativity. Sometimes you can feel when an exhibition has too much money. Sometimes it's better that the approach should be a poor one. Then the ideas are better. Not sometimes you can do too much of a good thing if you have the money. Reduce yourself. Just ask yourself what is really needed, what is really important. Sometimes a golden plinth is not the thing that a car needs.
True words, and I'd leave this without any further comment. The next question I would like to ask you is, what is your absolutely happy place in the museum if you visit us in Munich at the museum? If you share this with us, this is your little secret, your little happy place in the museum?
No, but you have to understand I have a lot of babies, more than 150 cars and bikes. And sometimes really at night I use the time to talk to all of them. And if you ask me about the happy places, there are also several. And you should visit the museum, then you will find your own as well. There is one in the bowl on the top. There you have a wonderful overview. The 360 degrees. And this is a very special structure. You are like a bird that you see the cars on platform 5. You look down onto 4 and 3. And, well, we are full, surrounded by cars or bikes. And for me, it's still the most beautiful place. Sometimes I hide there when I don't want to be found.
So go there and watch also the visitors, your surroundings, and enjoy the sounds and the smell. I think this is a very good place to do so. And then you have a nice coffee in the M1 coffee, I think it's called, right? Is it M1 Cafe?
Yeah, we have a wonderful museums cafe, and I think a good museum also needs a cafe because it's a platform of connection, people coming together, spending time, and if you want to step deeper into information, you are looking for a gift for friends, we also have a museums shop.
Very good. Now comes a very unfair question. I would like to send my apologies beforehand because this question might be like asking who is your favorite child, but do you have a favorite car in the museum?
I hate that question, you know that.
I know.
I have so many babies, so many children. If I tell you one or the others will be jealous. Perhaps it's the BMW 3.0 CSL, produced in 1971. If you see the elegance, which is really elegance at its best, if you see the color of the lacquering, and that dream car would also be a dream for me. And whenever we present cars to the museum, the 3.0 may never miss. So this is also the spirit, the zeitgeist to the early 70s. This car was produced shortly before the headquarters and the bowl itself was built. And so it also expresses a wonderful time, the belief that you can change everything, a wonderful spirit. So I love that car most.
I agreed on that one. And it comes back to the very first point, on a very, very early point in our conversation, because like the 507, I think the 3.0 is an example of a car looking quick while standing. So coming back to your thesis, speed in paintings. And in this case, I think there's a very final words, because this car is speed in standing as well. So Andreas, thank you very, very much for joining, sharing so many nice insights and secrets about the BMW Museum, your work as a curator at the museum. And I think we have to do another session, most likely, because there's so many things to tell and so many things to come. Thank you very much for joining Classic Art tonight.
And also thanks to you.
And everyone who tuned into this episode, thank you for listening to our little podcast. And we hope you like what we're doing. Please leave us a high star rating, or if possible, leave us comments. And please don't forget to subscribe to not miss a future episode of Classic Art. And at this point, we also would like to thank Alex and Marcus, who are our sound engineers, Friederike, our editor, as usual, and the whole Shot One team who is supporting us. And obviously, thank you very much, Andreas, for joining us.
So thank you very much for the invitation. I hope I will see you in the BMW Museum very soon, and bye-bye.